Okay, well, welcome along to episode 59 of Sweet Tea and Coffee. We haven't introduced ourselves in a long time. People have forgotten who you are. Who are you over there?
Who am I? I think that's from Zoolander. My name is Blake Russell.
All right, I'm Kendall McDonald. And just in case you forgot, that's who we are. Blake, it's finally not 100 degrees anymore.
I know, it's
and there's
nice
a
and cool.
pep in my step.
That's amazing.
Is there a pep in your step?
Well, yes, there is.
It's
Although,
exciting.
When I got here this morning, you were under a car, so I don't know what that means something.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I saw of you this morning was under a car.
I was under a car. Madison was having a strange noise coming from her car, and so what does every non-mechanic do? Just stick your head under there and see if you see anything. Here's the question: do I know what I'm looking for? Nope.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna give me. Oh yeah. This is the problem right here. Yeah.
But I'm gonna stick my head under there and at least pretend like I'm figure something.
Well,
I didn't see anything. Blake.
That's what we're doing on this.
I didn't see anything. Everything looked okay.
Crisp fall morning.
That's right. What is your favorite fall activity? Do you have a favorite? Like, is there something that is just you start to do when it hits the fall that you don't? Something new and fall-ish.
I start mowing the grass less. That's always
it's so good.
Nice. But you start thinking about cooler activities, like fires and things like that. If you walk outside and you smell smoke, you're like, that smells like fall.
Well, we're not quite there yet because we're still popping up close to 90. Nobody's got fire in the fireplace.
It's okay.
But hey, this is going to be a fun episode. I hope you're enjoying fall. We sure are around here at Sweet Tea and Coffee. But we've got a fun episode today. We've got the much requested guest, Caleb Homer, in the house. Caleb has, very similar to 2 guests ago to David Cooey, Caleb has done a lot of things, a lot of random things at such a ripe young age. And so he's going to tell us all about the different ventures that he has been in. And I want to tell you, Blake, he's not from West Texas, nor is he from East Texas.
Further than that.
He's from a strange place that many of us know nothing about. He's going to tell us all about that here in just a minute. Let's go to the theme music.
All right.
All right, we're here with Caleb Homer, and we are recording this at 9:19 a.m., which is fresh morning time, and the best thing to have in the morning is a great cup of coffee, which I've got this morning. Caleb actually is not showing his cards today. He's got nothing on the table. He came in here blank. It's a mystery. So Caleb, welcome to the show. And first question, just right off the bat, we need to know where you stand in the sweet tea and coffee debate.
Absolutely. No coffee on the table because I'm already 3 espressos in.
Oh man!
He told me he's been up since 4
this
morning, so
4.
he's already had his coffee in.
So we got that knocked out. I love coffee. I'm a coffee guy. I'll get Arnold Palmer from time to time. Do the old half and half.
Shout out to David Cooey.
Yep.
Yeah, half lemonade.
I'm gonna rename that drink the David Cooey.
That's right. Arnold
DC.
Palmer
Yeah.
is gone.
Can I get a DC, please?
Yeah, that's right. All right, so you're a coffee guy, but the last time, so I remember a conversation we had a while back. We were actually at a coffee shop, and I was telling you that our coffee maker broke, and I was having to do a French press now every morning. I think I was maybe complaining a little bit about that in the process, and I didn't know you were a big coffee guy at that time. Well, then you launched into this really passionate escapade is a good way of saying that. And we were asking me all these questions about how I do it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just got on Google and I followed the instructions, but I don't, it's not like so you're kind of, you're kind of a connoisseur a little bit of coffee. Would that be fair? I mean, you said that before you started that you and John James had a 20-minute conversation about coffee only.
This is true.
That's it. What does that say about you, Caleb?
Well, I enjoy the simple things in life. And if you're going to do it, it's worth doing right.
Okay. So you like to make the simple things complex.
Well, I mean, it's not like I'm hand grinding Folgers over at my house or anything, but
that's right.
There's a place for community coffee. I'm not a big Folgers guy.
You in the battle between
the two. It's got to be community. It's got to be.
I didn't know there was a battle, but I'm over here in T World, so
yes,
that's right. Yeah, well, just hang on a minute, Blake. We'll get to you.
You don't spend much time on the streets.
Actually, make sure you get me green leaf tea.
That's right.
Nothing else.
No, yeah, there's a lot to coffee. I mean, I don't know if you guys knew this. There's a whole industry out there called the coffee industry.
Yeah, apparently it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's this new fad catching on.
It's this thing. It's kind of like yogging.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy learning about it. I enjoy experiencing it. And there's a lot to learn. And so
I think that's the threshold when you begin to experience coffee. Mm-hmm. Instead of just drink coffee.
Sure.
That seems like you've crossed over into a new world. I'm not sure I'm in the experience world yet. Mm-hmm. I think I'm still drinking coffee, but that's good. That's good. One for the coffee team. We'll take it, Blake. We'll take it. Mark that one down for the coffee team. Well, okay. I said, Caleb, that you're from a strange land that many of us do not know. I actually knew the lake that you were from, the region, but I had the wrong state. So I'm glad you corrected me before we even started. But you're from and grew up in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Now if you guys aren't looking at your Google Maps right now, that's not anywhere near St. Augustine.
It's not Toledo Bend.
Or it's not Toledo Bend, not Rayburn.
Yeah.
So that's a long way. Mm-hmm. I think is the way you would describe that. That's a long way.
About 30 hours.
Yeah. Just a quick little run up the road. So that's a long way from Nevada to East Texas. What was it like growing up there, and how did you make your way to the Piney Woods?
Yeah. So I was born in Dallas. So I'm a native Texan in that regard. And then just divorce really took us out there. Mom got divorced, and then I went out there to stay with my grandparents that summer. And then at 2.5 years old, she came out to pick me up, met somebody. And then for the next 10 years, I grew up from 2.5 to almost 13. Kind of those elementary age formative years we spent, in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
Which is significantly different than here.
That's an understatement. Significantly different. Yeah.
And then what brought us back again is divorced. So they got divorced. My family's from East Texas. My grandparents are from Clarksville and St. Augustine.
Okay.
My mom graduated from Center High School. My aunt graduated. My brother graduated from Center High School. So, it's in the blood.
Yeah.
I just kind of grew up in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah. So what's that like? What is life in Lake Tahoe like? That's a vacation destination for so many, but what was it like growing up there?
I mean, life looked very similar to, I would say, probably your suburban life anywhere. One thing that is different is, like when I was going to school, we went year-round school. So every, 3 months we would get a month off. So it was 3 months on, 1 month off, 3 months on, 1
That's
month
interesting.
off, 3 months on, 1 month off. So there was that, just in terms of life and rhythm. That's how they did school where I went. I was a kid.
Yeah.
So there was a lot
and it was normal. I mean,
historically speaking, very normal. We rode our bikes around town. We put baseball cards in the spokes. We came home when the street lights came on. I grew up playing Little League baseball. Just very what most would call a normal life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came to Center. Is that where you went to high school? Is that where you did high school?
I started in 7th grade.
Okay.
So junior high and high school were in Center. And then started playing sports in junior high. And that became a big part of my life and my story.
Yeah. Okay. So you, that's right. Cause you were a big football player, right? Is that right? That was kind of the trajectory. You were going to try to go play college football. Am I remembering that right? Or you did? Did you play college football or?
Yeah, I played college football and college rugby.
Okay.
And so in junior high, I started playing football and baseball and running a little bit of track. And then high school, played football was my main focus, and played some baseball. And then my first year in college, played football. And then that was really kind of the turning point of my life. You know, sports, football was the epicenter of the focus of what you could do.
Yeah.
You know, that was the story. Work hard on the practice field, play hard on Friday nights, go play football in college. It's all going to be fine and dandy. And that's the end all be all. And for me, I got to Howard Payne is where I started, and it was really just not. That's kind of where that whole lie clashed with God's plan for me. And so ended up at the end of football season, my first semester, with a 0.8 grade point average.
Yeah. That won't do.
Right. And a diagnosis of epilepsy, because I started having seizures. I had my first seizure in a computer lab at one of my classes, and woke up on a stretcher, surrounded by my classmates and first responders.
Wow.
Yeah. And then kind of from there, brought me to Nacogdoches. My brother was going to school at SFA, and so I moved in with him and started working a night shift at a hotel as a night clerk from 11 to 7 in the morning, 11 at night till 7 in the morning.
So you dropped out of school?
Yeah, I was a dropout. I was a college dropout.
Okay. So that's where, I mean, now go back just a little bit if you can. You talked about where, you know, football and the clash of God's plan in your life and kind of what you had set your mind on. That kind of breaks down right there. That's where God starts to work. So, but before that, growing up, talk a little bit about, was there faith modeled or portrayed in your home? Were you, would you have called yourself a Christian before this point? Or was this kind of the moment where for the first time you really start to ask questions about faith? Where were you before that?
I would say yes and yes.
Okay, fill in the blanks.
Yes, right. So yes, I would have called myself a Christian.
Yeah.
Yes, I believed in the Christmas story that Jesus was born in a manger and all of those things. Yes, I went to, I went to youth group on Wednesday nights with all my buddies and all of that stuff. And then I would say, yes, that was when Jesus found me at my most broken, working in the middle of Nacogdoches at night with no one but me and him focused on the word. So unequivocally, my salvation came at 19 years old.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I had always been a Christian.
Yeah. That's, which is a really, really, really common story, that there's this, you know, we have a belief about God, but really actually following Jesus is a whole different thing. Surrendering our lives to him and following him is a whole different thing. And you're saying that happened to you at 19. And it sounds like a big part of that was the crashing down of what you had hoped for. I mean, that's got to be that all happens kind of all at once, where you're pursuing this football career and then you find yourself on a stretcher with a 0.8 GPA, and now all of a sudden you're out of school and working. I mean, that happens in a pretty short amount of time, and also is the loss of a dream. What's that like? Is it just a very dizzying kind of experience, or was it relief? Or I mean, I don't know. What was it like to kind of have the loss of what you'd hoped for there?
Well, it was bigger than that. I think, you know, that's what it boiled down to, is when Christ met me in the, you know, in the lowest of lows. Like he started to show me why I was chasing football. He started to show me that my brokenness was so deep, going all the way back to that boy growing up in Lake Tahoe with a broken family and broken relationships and a dad who was never there, and an identity that was empty, you know, and as I read through those scriptures and I really got into the Word for the very first time in my life, it became real. It was the strength that you think that you have, and this fake understanding that is the weight room and football and false masculinity. That's just you trying to hide. And so when he met me at my lowest of lows, it was like the scripture that really hammered home. And I had started from Genesis 1, chapter like 1:1, and I said, I'm going to read this Bible because I'm going to be able to enter into any conversation with anybody and say, yep, I've read that thing. You know, that was how I went about it. And I got to Psalms, and he said, you can find shelter under my wings. And it was just boom. It broke me down because that's exactly what I needed. I needed shelter. I needed comfort. I needed to be broken in order for him to really lead my life.
Yeah. Now that's incredible. Did you have somebody that was kind of prompting that journey, or was it for you this, this is what I've said I believed all along, but now that this crisis is here, I'm not really sure what I believe, and I've got to dig in? Was it more a solo kind of journey, or did you have somebody prompting you along the way to pick up your Bible, to read, to really dig in? What was that like?
I didn't have that narrative. Like I hadn't been told necessarily like this is what you believe. It was just like I would go to youth group on Wednesdays, you know, like, but those were also the same guys that I was partying with after the football games on Fridays. Yeah. So there wasn't really like a theological understanding necessarily.
It was just a social participation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I didn't really have any theological premise to kind of work through. And so in a lot of ways, like I consider that a blessing to not necessarily, I didn't really have a tainted understanding in a sense. Like it was more of just a clean slate. Yeah. So you just theologically
find yourself in this broken place, and you just decide, I'm gonna pick up my Bible and start reading.
Yep. From a very selfish perspective, like the impetus for that was, oh well, I can read this thing. You know, just like I can pick that up. I can do that. You know, I'm gonna check that box.
Yeah. Yeah. And then God turns it around and actually in that journey that you would say was selfish, God shows you the opposite of your strength and shows you your brokenness.
He says, I've always been your father. You know, even though you didn't have that, even though you never saw me, I've always seen you. Wow.
Well, so that's a powerful moment. So you're at this point, you're what, 18, 19? 19 years old. You're working you said at a hotel, working night shifts at a hotel. And then God interrupts your life. And I'm sure from that point, things begin to change. What begins to happen? What dominoes start to fall as you come into this understanding? God has always been my father. He has been there. You begin to really genuinely follow Jesus. What starts to shift in your life from there?
Enrolling at Angelina was a big step.
Okay.
In that direction. So I enroll in junior college and start taking some classes. And I look back and I think it was at that point that the Lord really gave me a love and enjoyment for reading. Like thinking back, I honestly can't remember reading a book.
Yeah, before that point?
Before that point.
Interesting.
Before that point, like thinking back through high school and thinking back through like maybe like Cat in the Hat or something. But I'm like, how did I even like get through school? And I'd never even read a whole book before.
Yeah.
So at that point, like I think he gave me a love for reading and a love for education, and he began to sharpen me not only in who I am in him, but also my mind, and I began to enjoy the things that he wants to bless us with.
Okay, so you go to Angelina, and at some point, I know that that you wind up at TCU. So, was it Angelina to Fort Worth, or how did you wind up at TCU?
Yep. So I was about a year or so into Angelina, and had some friends and family friends who had all graduated from TCU through summer camp. They were like, I really think that you should consider maybe the bigger picture, and then consider TCU as maybe an option after Angelina. And, in my mind, I'm like, 1, I'm from Center. Come on.
Yeah.
2, I have no money. 3, I'm not that smart. 4, just starting to stack up all of these things that I think are reality, and God doesn't play by those rules. And so by the end of 2 years at Angelina, I had applied to TCU and ended up getting a transfer scholarship to TCU, admitted, and, ready to rock and roll, moved to Fort Worth and start that chapter. And at that point, TCU was the second most selective school in Texas behind Rice University.
Wow.
So to go from a 0.8 grade point average from Howard Payne college dropout to receiving a transfer scholarship into TCU, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so my acceptance letter is framed in my house, because that's like God does big things.
Yeah.
With broken people.
Yeah. So what's going on in your faith at this point? I mean, you're still, so this is 2 years into that real life change moment where you begin to seriously follow Jesus, and so a lot changes. So you're brand new really in your faith. You're growing in your faith. Now you're off to TCU. God does what for you is just a remarkable, unimaginable thing where you get into this place that you'd not really given yourself a chance for. What does your faith look like at this point? I mean, what are you, as you go off to TCU, are you thinking, okay, Lord, what in the world are you doing? Where is this going? Or at that point, do you feel like the Lord had begun to give you sort of a vision and a passion for the gifts that he's given you, and kind of an idea of what you wanted to pursue?
Mm-hmm. At that point, I wanted to continue to focus on the main thing, which was showing up with him daily.
Yeah.
Staying disciplined in, my growth, and kind of going at it with hey, Lord, send me. Like, you're sending me off to this place that I know nothing about, but it's not on accident. And so, I'm going to do what you asked me to do. And so, at that point, just started saying yes to whatever it was. And so, that's relationships. And by relationships, I mean like relationships with other guys, and in our small group. I was part of RUF, which is Reform University Fellowship, being part of kind of men's ministry on that side of things, student-led men's ministry side of things, being part of the worship team, being part of the leadership team in RUF. The Lord brought athletics back into my life through rugby, in a very healthy kind of way. Mm-hmm. And so again, connecting with guys through that avenue of, hey, like, they're there. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Are you going to say something? Are you going to pass? And so I really wanted to be intentional about saying yes whenever a guy said, hey, let's have coffee, or hey, do you want to meet up for breakfast, or just really seeking that out because it had been laid on my heart, because that's where I had come from. And so seeing any of that brokenness, or seeing any of those maybe inclinations of not knowing, just speaking into that, I think that was a big part of that transition is learning to pour into, learning to take what had been poured into me and then pouring out to other guys.
So for you, it was the practice of your faith, which, I mean, this sounds kind of like an elementary thing to say, but I think it is important that the practicing of our faith happens in the context of community. And that not only is a community of others that are following Jesus, that are pouring into us and us pouring into them. And that's talking about the way that we were intended to be formed and shaped is through the Lord working in each one of us and building one another up. And so you're discovering that in a Christian community context, and at the same time realizing that practicing my faith is relational in the sense that means building relationships with those who don't know you and not know you, but know the Lord, and being open to investing in those lives, that sharing the gospel happens in the context of relationship. And so you're really discovering in those years the power of relationship in both the way it strengthens you and the way that the Lord has asked you to share your story and share his story in the lives of those that don't know him. And that's interesting because, now let's maybe make a jump, because as you're hearing that, and if you know Caleb, that makes a lot of sense with what he does now. So let me just sketch a little bit of what you do now, but the journey to get there is also very interesting. So if you know Caleb now, you know him in probably one of two ways. Number one, you know him as the owner of Narrowway CrossFit down on South Street, and you've been doing that now for a few years, or you know him as a coach / athletic director. I think that's the correct title, / U8 soccer coach. But you know him in kind of probably one of those athletic capacities. And it makes sense as I'm listening to your story. I'm going, yeah, okay, there's a lot of boxes there that, deep relationships and sports, and the Lord worked in your life in a big way in those areas. And so now that's kind of a platform for you. But it's not a straight path in getting there. Mm-hmm. It's not that we come out of TCU and then all of a sudden we're running a CrossFit gym. It's a bit of a winding entrepreneurial path. So for you, is it at TCU, or where does the spark for starting and creating business and that whole thing, where does that begin, and how do you go from there all the way to kind of where you are now, which is deeply invested in a coaching lifestyle? Mm-hmm. It's a big question.
Sure. So how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, how did you get to where you are?
Every college kid, to my knowledge, is asked the question, so what now?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you going to do with that degree?
That's right.
And so when I graduated with a degree from TCU in the general studies of business. So I knew generally that I wanted to do business.
There it is. That's it.
Right.
Success.
So I had kind of already unpacked some of that. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, and so I started in a role as a full-time director of a summer camp. That's hiring, that's recruiting, that's operations during, and that's a full season, full-time deal. That really helped with learning a lot about how to manage people and how to manage parent relations and how to do some of that stuff. And then from there, I went into sales. I did some phone sales stuff, and then from there, I went into private equity healthcare marketing. So working remotely in private equity healthcare.
Now, let me stop you there. None of these appear to have a link to one another. String those together? What's the link between all of these?
Honestly, God's plan is the only thing that I can come up. I'm being dead serious.
Yeah.
I'm being dead serious. I mean, it sounds cliche, but honestly, I mean, yes, relationships. There's some relationships and some relational overlap when it comes to organizations that different people are are at and needs of those organizations, so forth. But like in terms of applying for a random job somewhere, and like there's not a really linear path.
Yeah.
So yeah, did that for 5 years and learned a whole heck of a lot. Not only about the tactical side of how to do that, the ins and outs of analytics and informatics and data modeling and all of that, but also I had a really, really just key mentor in my life, who was my boss, who was at the director level, that he showed me how to be unapologetically Christian in any circumstance. So whether you're sitting before a board of directors for a $500 million company, or you're in conversation with a homeless man that just wants a hot cup of coffee, like you need to be, and we should be, Christian at all times.
Yeah.
And he showed me how to do that. Not that, we need to be abrasive about that. Not that we need to Bible beat anybody, but like who you are is who you are. Mm-hmm. And you never know what God's plan is. So just show up for him. And yeah, I mean, so that was huge.
Yeah.
And then, so from that went into frac analytics. So spent some time in the data van, doing frac analytics on site in West Texas.
There it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Put that one on the scoreboard.
Actually,
I mean, he has links to East Texas too. So
okay,
just so
we just needed one.
Ago.
Okay, we just need one West Texas reference.
Right.
Thank you.
I spent a lot of time in Midland, honestly.
There we go.
Really did.
It's depressing.
Keep going, Caleb. Don't let Blake's scorn for West Texas interrupt you.
It's all good. Yeah, and then, in different capacities, help start some businesses, help start some marketing businesses, and some summer camp consulting groups and that kind of thing. Well, I say groups, like those were two different entities.
Yeah.
Not multiple. And then we were at a point, Lauren and I, my wife and I, where I had some bandwidth to kind of maybe come home. One, because I really wanted to. Like I got tired of FaceTiming my wife and kids at bath time, and I'm in Midland for the next month. And I just, it became this like, this isn't who you are. This isn't who we are. This isn't what you want. And so I think sometimes the Lord shows us things so that we can understand what we don't want, and then it's our decision to either be obedient or not.
Yeah.
But he's like, hey, check it out. So yeah, just being obedient in that.
Take us into that conversation, just if you don't mind, just in terms of husband and wife, as you realize this is not what we want. I mean, I would assume that that's not something that you just wake up one morning and go, oh, this is not what we want. Call Lauren. Lauren, this is not what we want. We're going to change career path or whatever. I assume that's something that happens over time, but at some point it does become for the both of you a question around obedience. I mean, you just said whether you're going to be obedient or not. Take us in, if you don't mind, to that process of discerning, number one, this is where we're going. Number two, this is not the direction that we feel like the Lord is calling us or that we want to go. And now, how do we turn this around and how do we move in a different direction? What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't at that point where we decided what our priorities were going to be in life. Family had always been right under marriage when it comes to like God and Jesus, me and you in terms of husband and wife, and then family, and then everything else.
Yeah.
And so everything else had kind of started to work its way up.
Yeah.
In between in a place that it didn't need to be. And so just that first awareness, and then, okay, we're in this position. This is not where we need to be. And that happens, I think, that needs to be a healthy space in conversation with any couple.
Yeah.
And even that in and of itself doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
You have to be very intentional about creating those opportunities, asking good questions, asking important, eternal questions, not just like, what do you want to have for dinner?
Yeah.
But like, who do we want to be as a family, as a couple? Who do we want our kids to be? And I would say, even in addition to that, and it's pretty small, but I had the opportunity to sit down with a guy at a men's retreat one year, and he was like, "There's a simple fact, like, you're not going to be the CEO of a Fortune 50 company or a Fortune 100 company and be home for baths every night. Like, there's some things in life that are just mutually exclusive." And we've got to vote. And when it boils down to it, you vote with your time.
Yeah.
And you can say certain things, but where you're putting your time, that's a vote. You're voting with those hours in the day. And so that just was really what it boiled down to.
Yeah.
Was I was putting my ballot in the wrong box for a season. And I'm so thankful that the Lord gently made us aware of that, made me aware of that. And he was gentle in that trial. So,
but you're talking about a process that took, I'm sure, patience from both of you, processing, kind of letting you, basically allowing the Lord to lead you individually to a place where you both kind of recognize the same thing, so that you could then together move in a different direction. And I think that's really important. And just in terms of just a little marriage tip there from Caleb. I hope you caught that. But it's just that asking questions, asking good questions, and going on a journey together, but honoring one another's process over a period of time, so that you can continue to move forward in unity. And I think I'm certainly guilty sometimes of going, this is what we're going to do. Okay, you ready? Let's go now.
Yeah.
instead of
I've been guilty of that too.
Yeah.
It's like, you get yourself ready for church, and then you expect everyone else to be ready at the exact same time.
Yeah, totally. So I appreciate you taking us into that. But then, then some changes are coming. You realize the priority list is out of whack. I love that picture of I'm voting with my time and I'm voting in the wrong direction. And so you and Lauren decide we're gonna change things. We're gonna reshift these priorities. So what does that look like for you guys? How did that change take place?
Well, that's kind of where Regents enters the picture, and becoming a PE coach. Lauren was reading some books about education. We had the littles. Stephen was I think 3 at the time, who's our oldest, and then Abigail would have been 1. And she was like, "Hey, there's this thing called like classical education and so on and so forth, and we have one in our town, and they have a part-time PE teacher position. You should apply for it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, okay. I've got time. I've got some bandwidth." And so I went in and talked to the headmaster, and, we just talked about, culture fit, talked about whether or not that would work out, and ended up working out. And so that's kind of where that started. And fast forward, almost 4 years later, and doing athletic director stuff, still coaching PE, have opened a gym, and yeah, there's things that I look back on during this journey, all the way back to being a director at a summer camp, doing things that you would think, oh, this digital marketing, how does that have to do with coaching a kid on the playing field? And it's like, there's been moments of just so much clarity where it's like, Lord, you were preparing me for that next thing, you know, and certainly I can think back to questions of like, what am I doing? Where is this going? What am I doing? All those other people, they knew, I'm going to graduate with a degree in finance and I'm going to go work for this company, such and such. I'm going to go be a Deloitte consultant. I'm going to go get my degree in education and I'm going to be a teacher the rest of my life. And for me, it was like, where's this going? What am I doing? But I will say within the last few years, there's been some of those points of clarity where it's like, keep going because look where we've come from.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense if you just take that next step and that next step. And I've come to trust and believe that because I've seen it play out.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite, just kind of transitioning to the CrossFit gym, because some of it, obviously the PE coach was before that, but then not long after you'd been doing that, you opened this gym. And just to take people into this conversation, it's a conversation I'll remember for a long time. But I knew you. We had worked out together at Piney Woods CrossFit before that closed, and that's where I'd gotten to know you a little bit. And then we kind of had a gap where I didn't, and that's that. Now it's interesting hearing kind of where your life took you, but a gap where I didn't see you as much and didn't keep up as much. And then you guys become part of our church, and pretty early on after that, I think my timing's probably okay here, but pretty early on after that is when you start to really seriously pursue opening the gym. And you and I went to coffee. It's back when Nine Flags Coffee was open, where Brendan's is now, and we sat in there, and you talked me through the prompting that you felt like the Lord had given you on where you were going to open this gym. And the reason I think it really stood out to me was because it coincided with some things that I was really thinking about, that I feel like the Lord was really teaching me as it relates to community and neighborhood. And I think we always think when God calls us, He calls us to jobs and vocations. And I was really trying to break from that and understand how God calls people to people and communities and places. Place is so, and setting is so important in Scripture. And I was really thinking and studying a lot about that. And then you sat me down and said, man, we just feel like the Lord's asked us to invest here. And not just Nacogdoches, but specifically on the south side of town, right here. It was close to the church, but also that this place and setting had a real important piece for you. Take us through that a little bit. I know it's a little bit of a change in direction, but I wanted to ask you about that, because that's always been a conversation that stood out to me. Take us through that thought process of deciding that this place mattered, and this was going to be the place that you were going to invest this business, and this business was a place where you wanted people to meet the Lord. But place mattered, and the location, being on the south side of town, really really mattered. Take us into that thought process, if you could.
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost, like, we have some incredible people that come to our gym. Some really special people that do big things, and I'm so thankful for every single one of them. In terms of South Street and the South Side, I don't know why God does what He does.
Yeah.
But it was one of those answering, like, just obediently kind of things. It was again a total God thing. Honestly, like, we were pretty far along in the conversation with a place over on Stallings. And we were kind of trying to work out some details. It wasn't really working, and we just couldn't meet up on some things. And so, Lauren and I, we're driving to Sunday worship, and there's a sign out in front of the location that we're at now, and it's for lease. So I call the number, and we do a walkthrough. Well, they're just wanting to rent out the front. like the front, 300 square feet. And I'm like, well, what's back here in the back? Let's talk about the back part.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key success factor when you're trying to run a gym, so we talked about it, and it just at that point wasn't even on the table. And about 2 weeks later, I get a call back from Dr. Irwin, and he's like, Caleb, like, our conversation is still in my mind. And so if you don't have like a hard set timeline on this thing, then maybe we can make something work. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. Like, you've got to be unapologetically Christian in wherever you are, whatever you're doing. It goes back to the mentor I was talking about in private equity, healthcare marketing. It's like, that's the thing that I learned. Fast forward however many years to a conversation I'm having with a landlord. And it's like, if I'm not all in for Christ in that conversation, then that deal never happens. But because I'm like, hey, this is who I am for you every day, and I'm going to show up. He calls me back. He's like, hey, I think we can make something work. Wait, what? And so God has us on South Street for a reason and a purpose. I have no doubt about it, because you show up one day at a time and you say yes. And that's exactly where he wants us right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to, that's so cool. And we talked last Sunday, really, and you just heard, well, now I'm getting dates out of whack, because who knows when you're listening to this. I'm sorry, friends. But we had Matt on the show last week, and when Matt preached the Sunday before that podcast released, one of the things that we talked about is obediently going to the places that God calls you. And sometimes the place where God's calling you is the place where you already are. You're just not walking and calling in that place. And so I love that story, because it's you're going with God on a journey, and you don't know all of the whys. You don't know, okay, God, you're planting us here on South Street for this reason. I'm in marketing for this reason. You're going with God, and the trust factor is not in what that means is coming. The trust factor is in the one that is leading you, which for you goes all the way back to this moment, in the hotel.
He says, I'm going to be a lamp unto your feet.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't say I'm going to be a spotlight.
Yeah.
He doesn't say I'm going to be a, this thing where you can see your whole life laid out in front of you. I'm not a lighthouse.
Yeah.
I'm one step at a time. So, so be with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I want to just kind of close there, because I think some of us, we are in the middle of what we might label as a meandering journey. And maybe you're kind of like right in this spot where Caleb was, going, what am I doing? Where is all this going? What in the world could God be up to? And I hope that what you've heard today is that, look, maybe a lot of that doesn't make sense. And maybe even you are where you are because of mistakes. And maybe you are where you are because of wrong turns and mistakes and failures. And you've heard that in Caleb's story. You've heard wrong turns, and you've heard bumps in the road. But you've also heard what seems like random spots where God puts you. But the thing that's constant in all of those things is that the Lord is in it. That He is present in it. He's present in it when we're off course, whatever that really means, and He's present in it when it seems like things don't really make sense. And the answer to where do I go from here? The answer seems to be, and I hear this in Caleb's story, is just keep following Him.
Yeah.
And just take the next step. And Caleb says this all the time in the gym. I know, because I'm on the victim end of his coaching punishment often, but it's like, it's not complex. Show up and do the next thing. Just show up and say yes to the very next thing, and then say yes to the next thing, and then the next thing. And that really is so true. And what your story, Caleb, I think highlights is And even when it seems like, where is this going? Say yes to the Lord in the next thing. He is present, and he is leading, and he is working things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose, even when for us in our perspective, it doesn't quite make sense. So all the way from Nevada to South Street, the Lord has been at work in your story. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. And man, I hope that's encouraged you today. I hope you've been encouraged, especially if you're in one of those spots where you're going, I don't know where any of this is going. So as always, we want to hear from you. We want to hear how Caleb's story has impacted you. We want to hear maybe where you're at in all of this, and that would be fantastic for us to be able to hear and share with others. And you know how to reach out to us in all of the different ways that you can. There's a variety of ways. One of those is tapping us on the shoulder, and I've had many of you do this, and I love it, and saying, hey, listen to so-and-so's podcast, and it was really great. Here's how I was impacted. So we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us. And episode 60 is around the corner. Big 6-0.
It's coming up next.
And we're at 10,000 plus listens, and we're pumped for that.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So great. So thanks so much for listening. Caleb, thanks for stopping by. And we'll see you guys soon. Adios.